In a twist that literally nobody's seen coming, Spider-Man has become the new Juggernaut. With as powerful and strong Spider-Man is normally, now he has literally become unstoppable. But even still, that might not be enough, as the fate of not only the world but the universe rests on top of his shoulders. Yeah, so we immediately see Spider-Man partaking in letting loose with his new amazing abilities, going on to say, "Ever since a spider bite changed the course of my life, I've understood what it felt to be strong, but I've never felt unstoppable. But here and now, it's intoxicating." As you know, he punches Cyttorak straight through the other dimension, through space itself, down crashing onto Earth. And while all of this is happening, Spider-Man as the Juggernaut, or having the powers of a Juggernaut, fighting Cyttorak and this entire situation with the Blight, we see the current Sorcerer Supreme Dr. Doom and Dr. Strange, who is currently less powerful than usual, watch all of this go down. Not only being unable to do anything meaningful to this cosmic horror of an entity, but even Doom is surprised of what Spider-Man has become. And he's not the only one, as even the Juggernaut himself sees this new Spider-Man in his very familiar and similar state that he is in now, even going on to say that Peter now looks ridiculous. Though the heroes in the duo here don't really have time to fully regroup and assess the new situation they find themselves in, as Cyttorak, the avatar of the Blight, is reviving and restarting his power back up. So the Juggernaut duo, Spider-Man Peter Parker and Kane Marco, decide to pull an old familiar X-Men trick, which before usually consisted of Colossus throwing Wolverine at whatever target. As you know, one Juggernaut being throwing another Juggernaut level being is like 10 times more powerful, as he bull rushes and puts the pain on Cyttorak, even finding out that his special abilities almost cure the blight and the soul rot that Cyttorak has been spreading around. Which, this is crazy for a couple of reasons, the main one being, they now have a working strategy, a working solution to this giant problem that before no one could really crack how to solve. And even the Juggernaut Kane Marco, who, you know, isn't really the smartest or the sharpest tool in a tool shed, even he realizes the importance that Spider-Man and his new abilities serve, as soon as Peter wants to get back into the battle, Juggernaut immediately stops him, telling Spider-Man that instead of fighting here on the ground with the almost second in command, his fight is up there, fighting the Blight, this giant cosmic level entity himself. But Peter, even with how powerful he is now and what he can do, he still has doubts, saying the Blight, but it's so big, it's so powerful. But even with this, even with Peter's doubts and fears, Juggernaut goes on to give him a little bit of advice from one Juggernaut to another, telling him, don't think, just do. And ironically, Spider-Man does kind of both at the same time. While yes, instinctively he immediately jumps into action, but while thinking at the same time, he goes on to make up his mind, fully devote himself into making the sacrifice play, putting his life down on the line in a very Spider-Man thing to do. As he goes on to say, I've done enough thinking, I know what the solution is. And right now, nothing else matters. And just like that, after charging up a powerful jump, he jumps up not just above the planet into orbit, into the space, but into the giant cosmic entity trying to devour and corrupt Earth itself. And of course, with a threat this huge and on this scale, you would think where are all the other heroes of New York, or the world for that matter, but more importantly, why isn't the current Sorcerer Supreme, you know, the person who was in charge of handling magical threats like this and on this scale, why isn't he doing anything more to, you know, defend his own planet? Well, we see simply because Victor Von Doom, Dr. Doom, this new now Sorcerer Supreme, this was his intentions from the get-go. As even Doctor Strange slowly starts to put two and two together, going on to question why would Spider-Man even make this type of plan. He knows that only striking the Blight physically is only a temporary solution, and without Cyttorak himself, who was the only way to recast the spell that would stop the Blight from entering this reality, it would all be useless. Useless unless someone takes Cyttorak's place. Someone making the sacrifice play that Spider-Man just did to hold off the Blight for eternity or as long as their lifespan is. Of course, Dr. Doom, knowing Spider-Man is that type of person to put his life down on the line when all else fails, of course, he manipulated everything to get in this current situation that we are now. And speaking of Cyttorak, we move over to the Crimson Cosmos, which is currently in utter dismay and chaos. Every one of the scions of Cyttorak, his more or less children and kids, slaughtered, killed, and only two remain. Syra here, and the other one, Cyttorak, who of course is being the big bad and the avatar of the Blight. And the actual dimension here isn't the only thing that is in chaos or broken, as even Cyttorak himself, who at this point was portrayed to be this almost godlike figure, this unmovable object, this stature of untold power. But here we see he is more humanized than ever. Which, this is something new for even Cyttorak himself, you know. Traditionally, he is a being of high power and high status within the Marvel cosmic order and hierarchy. He doesn't bother himself with emotions like other sentient beings might. But here, him going on to say, why? Why am I immobilized, indecisive, confused? His daughter, Syra, the other scion of Cyttorak himself, She goes on to say, I've been asking myself that very question ever since I met this curious human, Peter Parker. The unthinkable has happened. You have lost 6 of your children, their immortality, their essence stripped away. And what you are feeling now, what you're experiencing, humans call it grief. Of course, Cyttorak lashing out, claiming that nothing can hurt Cyttorak. He is so far above that. Syra, of course, goes on to further point out her father's flaws, saying that the great Cyttorak, this powerful being, did nothing as his son Calyx killed all of his other siblings. Cyttorak, you are broken. And even when Cyttorak is pleading to make it stop, this feelings, this emotion stuff he has never felt before, Syra simply says she can't. The pain, it's inevitable, but maybe there is someone who can help. One person who has not only helped her before, but who is currently, being the only saving grace for the Earth dimension and all the humans there. Of course, as we move back over to that saving grace, we see Spider-Man, still in space itself, fighting this cosmic horror entity, going on to say, as horrifying as it is, the Blight is a force of nature. It exists to corrupt and capture souls from existence. And why is that? No one really knows. You might as well ask the same question, well, why is there gravity? In the end, it doesn't really matter. But what does matter is the here and now, and how before, Doctor Strange figured out a way how to hide the entire dimension, this universe, from the Blight. But it took the power of Cyttorak, a being with godly power. Of course, Spider-Man in this moment himself has some of that power in him, making him, of course, into this Juggernaut form that he is now. As he continues to say while activating said power, I am just a kid from Queens, but with the slice of power I got from a god's daughter, I think I can make it work. I can cast the same spell, the same magic that hid Earth from the Blight's attack and perception. He can finally solve this, save everyone, be the hero. But there are a couple downsides. As he goes on to say, he has to do this continuously. So more or less think of it as a Atlas holding up the sky from Greek mythology, forced to carry this burden for eternity until either he gives out and dies or the Blight overpowers him. But just like that, just while he is here accepting his fate, another voice rings out. And this time it is Cyttorak himself, coming to speak to the one person, the one man who has not only changed his daughter's life, but potentially could change his. As he goes on to say, failure is inevitable. Well, maybe not today, of course. With the power of my blood coursing through you, you can live about 100 years or so. But the Blight, the entity that you are fighting against, is a part of the primal fabric of the universe. It will eventually prevail. All of this being nothing new to Peter, he made the conscious decision to do this. But Cyttorak here comes to Peter Parker, just a self-proclaimed kid from Queens, thrust into this crazy situation because he just wants to know, why do you fight? Eventually the Blight, this entity, will prevail and you will lose. You and everyone you care about will die. So why do it when life is just so fragile? Cyttorak experiencing this firsthand with the loss of his children and his crimson cosmos dimension being laid bare and waste. We see Spider-Man answer this in almost a very profound way, which almost makes up from the issue before when he was acting very out of character, getting depressed, and almost quitting Spider-Man and not seeing any future. As he goes on to say, despite the magical craziness over the last few days, this is the only life I have. Of course, most of the time it's hard and it's not fair, and sometimes it just flat out sucks, but it's my life. There's not another one just like it anywhere. It's beautiful exactly because it is so fragile. Every life is like that. Even if 1,000 years, my life and anything I ever did wouldn't matter, it matters today in the here and now. And today is worth fighting for. Of course, in his head, seeing all the people over the years that maybe even started as villains or some of his closest friends and allies that his life has been a part of and touched and made better in some form or fashion. From Venom to Mary Jane to Aunt May to even the Green Goblin, arguably his arch nemesis. As he goes on to continue saying, with a view like Cyttorak, seeing over the horizon of the universe, almost stretching indefinitely, infinity, he doesn't exactly expect Cyttorak to understand the fragile and almost limitations of a singular human life. And frankly, Spider-Man doesn't really care if Cyttorak gets it or not, because right now, he is alive and he is fighting for what's right, just like everyone else. And while Spider-Man is no Captain America Steve Rogers, he isn't the ultimate leader, one to give great speeches to inspire the masses. Yet at the same time, Spider-Man, his convictions, what he does, his actions, it is just so real and understanding that even just his words and motives are able to even move the most powerful of gods, as suddenly Cyttorak just shoves him aside. And while this is happening, Spider-Man looking back, he sees it. Cyttorak has taken his place, taken the burden of carrying this magical power and purpose to defend the entire Earth dimension against the Blight, which just the imagery here further cements the Atlas from the Greek mythology comparison, literally holding the world on his shoulders, sacrificing his freedom to do whatever he pleases, inspired specifically by Spider-Man himself and his convictions. As Cyttorak himself goes on to say that I will become the crimson casket that shields this world, this dimension from the horrors of the Blight. I will protect my remaining children, as flawed as they are, and this world. I make this pledge because I grieve, and I fear that without action, grief is all that will remain. And just like that, while the cosmic side of things are figured out, Spider-Man gets pulled through a portal by Doctor Strange and arrives back on Earth. Of course, not being in any type of fighting shape after just experiencing everything that he did. Thankfully though, it seems like the threat here on Earth has also been taken care of. Kal-El's fully subdued and defeated. Spider-Man, of course, being almost traumatized from this entire situation, goes on to say, I never want to do magic ever again, not even at a kid's birthday party. And with Peter's new understanding and empathy for life itself and everything that he holds dear, we see a little montage of him going to those closest to him, starting with Aunt May, the love he shares with his family, the care he shares with his friends in the form of, Black Cat, us also seeing the aftermath of what happened with Kal-El being imprisoned by Syra, who is now almost the queen of the Crimson Cosmos, while Cyttorak is, being the coverage and the shield against the Blight. And there we have it, everyone. That is the full story of the 8 deaths of Spider-Man. A very interesting premise, and I think the ending landed and made up for a little bit of its shortcomings within the previous issues, especially with Peter giving up, quitting being Spider-Man for the most ridiculous of reasons, even if it did seem out of character a little bit. But that's just what I think. What do you guys think? I know a lot of people didn't like this storyline, so of course your mileage may vary. Either way, leave all of your thoughts and comments down below. And if you're new here and want to support what I do, consider becoming a channel member so you can get access to all cool stuff and allow us here to continue pumping out this content. As always, this was AJ here at The Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.